I will never forget the night we stopped that bus along Benin Ori Road. People still talk about it till today because of what they found inside. I can still hear the cries, the confusion, and the way the driver was sweating like a thief that just got caught. I was only 24 then, still struggling with life, working as a conductor part-time. If anybody had told me that a so-called man of God would be at the center of such evil, I would have sworn it was a lie, but I saw it with my 2 eyes. That evening, the road was busy as usual. Trailers honking, buses loading, passengers shouting, "Benin, Benin straight," and hawkers running after cars. I was standing close to one checkpoint near Shagamu when I noticed a strange-looking bus. It was one of those small white buses pastors usually use for crusades. On the side, it was boldly written, "Mountain of Heavenly Fire, Ministries." Normally, that kind of bus doesn't raise suspicion, but something about the way the driver kept looking into his mirror made me curious. As luck would have it, police stopped the bus. The driver jumped down quickly, talking fast, saying he was carrying church instruments. But the officers weren't convinced. They opened the back, and that was when the world turned upside down. Inside, wrapped in black nylon, was what looked like a human body. The stench was unbearable. One officer almost vomited. People started gathering immediately, shouting, "Jesus, human being!" When they dragged the so-called pastor out of the bus, I saw his face clearly. He was a well-known preacher in the area. People used to say he prayed fire down from heaven. But that night, he was shaking like a criminal. What shocked me most was not just the dead body they found, but the secret he confessed later. Something so terrible that I still wonder how many people in church are truly safe. When the news spread that the man behind the wheel was Pastor Ezekiel, my heart almost stopped. This was a man whose posters were everywhere in Benin City. His face was on billboards, radio stations carried his crusade jingles, and people said he healed the sick with just one touch. Mothers carried their children to his church for prayers. Men and women shouted his name as if he was another Elisha. Yet, here he was, caught with a corpse wrapped like contraband in the boot of his church bus. The crowd grew wild. Some people tried to rush at him, shouting, "Ole, ritualist pastor!" The police had to fire warning shots in the air to scatter them. I remember a woman kneeling on the road, holding her head, saying, "So now this man I carry my pikin go meet last week." Her tears broke me, because I too had once believed men like him were untouchable. The officers dragged him aside and started questioning him. At first, he denied everything, swearing he was innocent. He claimed it was a goat wrapped inside, and maybe robbers had planted something in his bus. But when they tore the nylon open and everyone saw the cold, lifeless face of a young man, his lies scattered like paper in the wind. I felt my knees weaken. That body could have been anyone. Somebody's brother, somebody's son. The most shocking part was his calmness after the discovery. Instead of crying or begging, he simply said, "There are things you people will never understand. This world is deeper than you think." The way he spoke sent chills down my spine. It was as if he had already accepted his fate. That night, as they bundled him into the police van, I had no idea that this was only the beginning. Later, when the real truth came out, we discovered that Pastor Ezekiel was not walking alone. The people behind him were bigger than anything we imagined. The police station that night was like a market square. Everybody wanted to see the man of God who had been caught with a dead body. Journalists with cameras, villagers who followed from the checkpoint, even top officers who normally don't show face at night. Everybody gathered. I stood outside the compound, peeping through the gate, trying to catch every detail.
Inside, Pastor Ezekiel was sitting on a wooden bench, still wearing his white suit. The suit was stained with sweat and dust from the struggle, but he sat there like a man who was not bothered. They asked him who the boy in the nylon was. He just smiled faintly and said, "A sacrifice." That single word turned the whole station into chaos. Some police officers shouted, others covered their mouths, one even slapped him in anger. But he remained calm. He later explained that the dead boy was not ordinary, that he had been chosen. According to him, his ministry needed power to grow, and ordinary fasting and prayer could not do it. He said there were forces in Nigeria, big churches, politicians, businessmen, who all fed from the same dark source. He too wanted to belong. When I heard that, I felt my stomach churn. My mother always warned me that not every man carrying Bible is from God, but I never thought I would witness proof with my own eyes. The most frightening part was when Pastor Ezekiel said something that made every officer freeze. He promised that within 7 days, something strange would happen in that station. He said his arrest would not stop what was already in motion. And when he laughed after saying it, even the boldest officers avoided his eyes. I left that night with fear in my chest. I couldn't sleep. And true to his words, what happened days later still haunts me whenever I remember. 3 days after Pastor Ezekiel's arrest, strange things started happening at the station. At first, it was little things. The officer who tore the nylon open during the search suddenly fell sick. They said he complained of stomach pain that evening, and by morning, he was gone. No doctor could explain it. People began whispering that the pastor had cursed him. By the 5th day, 2 other officers who handled the corpse also collapsed mysteriously. Their families rushed them to hospital, but they didn't survive. The whole community began to panic. Some said it was the spirit of the boy seeking revenge. Others believed Pastor Ezekiel's words, that there were forces stronger than the law. The atmosphere in town was heavy, like death was walking among us. I remember going to buy bread one morning when I overheard 2 women talking. One said, "Now who go deliver us from all these fake pastors where they use human beings for church growth?" The other replied, "My sister, nobody is pure again. If police no fit stop them, who go fit?" Their voices carried the pain of betrayal. Everyone had once trusted this man. Now people were questioning every preacher around. Meanwhile, at the station, Pastor Ezekiel was still calm. He didn't eat much, didn't shout, didn't beg. Instead, he kept repeating the same words. "The sacrifice has already started. You can only delay it, not stop it." The DPO even tried to interrogate him personally, but the man just laughed, saying, "Ask your guy in Abuja, he knows." That statement shook everyone because nobody understood how deep the matter went. By the 7th day, when the boy's family came to identify the body, things took another shocking turn. The mother of the boy fainted instantly when she saw her son. But it was the father's reaction that changed everything. He looked Pastor Ezekiel in the eyes and said something that made my blood run cold. "So you finally decided to use him." When the father of the dead boy said those words, the whole station went silent. Even the buzzing of the ceiling fan seemed to stop. People looked at him, then looked at Pastor Ezekiel, then back at him again. It was as if he had revealed a secret without meaning to.
The man's name was Chief Okafor, a well-known businessman in Benin. Many people respected him because of his wealth. He was always in the front seat during crusades, always donating to churches, always sponsoring charity events. To see him in tears was shocking enough, but the way he looked at Ezekiel told us there was more to the story. The DPO quickly asked him, "Chief, what do you mean by that statement?" Chief Okafor shook his head, wiping his eyes, and said, "This man knows what I'm talking about. We had an agreement. That boy was not supposed to die like this. He was not supposed to be exposed." The crowd outside went mad. People began shouting, some trying to force the gates open. Police had to send for backup to control the chaos. Inside, Pastor Ezekiel finally spoke, and his words confirmed our worst fears. He said, "Chief, don't pretend here. You brought him to me. You wanted power for your business. I only followed through." The DPO nearly lost his temper. He banged the table, shouting, "Are you people mad? Is this how low our society has fallen?" But neither man looked shaken. They kept exchanging glances like 2 men who had dug a pit too deep to climb out of. That day, I realized the evil was not just about one pastor. It was a network. Pastors, businessmen, maybe even politicians, connected by blood sacrifices. And the boy was not just a victim. He was a bargaining chip in something bigger than all of us. The worst part, the way Chief Okafor's hands trembled, told me he was afraid, not of the police, but of something else, something unseen. After that heated exchange between Pastor Ezekiel and Chief Okafor, the case became bigger than the local police. News reached Benin and then Abuja. By the next morning, officers from the Federal CID arrived with tinted jeeps. They cleared the station, pushed everyone out, and held a closed-door session with Ezekiel and Chief Okafor. Nobody knew exactly what was said, but whispers started spreading that some top names were mentioned. I waited outside with the rest of the curious crowd, my heart beating fast. Rumors flew left and right. Some people said the pastor was about to be released because his people had arrived. Others said they would transfer him secretly to Abuja so that the truth would never come out. My head was spinning. How could a man caught with a corpse still command such fear and protection? Around noon, the officers brought Ezekiel out. His hands were cuffed, but he walked with his chest out like he was the one in control. As they led him to the jeep, he suddenly stopped, turned to the crowd, and said in a calm voice, "This thing has only started. Blood will flow until the altar is satisfied." The way he said it made even hardened policemen flinch. Mothers grabbed their children. Men crossed themselves. Some even spat on the ground. That night, social media exploded. Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, everywhere, people were sharing the video of the pastor being paraded. Hashtags like ritual pastor and Benin sacrifice trended non-stop. Some claimed they had once attended his crusade. Others said they suspected him all along. But deep down, many feared he would never face justice. Not in this Nigeria where money and connection can cover any sin. And then the following morning, something happened that confirmed our fears. The station where Pastor Ezekiel was kept mysteriously caught fire. Files, evidence, even the corpse of the boy, all burnt to ashes. Yet somehow, Ezekiel himself was not inside. Nobody knew how he vanished. The morning of the fire, I rushed to the station like every other curious villager. Smoke was still rising, policemen were running up and down, and fire service trucks were parked uselessly spraying water on what was already gone. It smelled of burnt rubber and flesh. My chest tightened when I realized the body of the boy had been destroyed in the fire. It was as if someone wanted to wipe away every trace of evidence. But the biggest shock came when I asked one of the officers about Pastor Ezekiel. He just looked at me, his face pale, and whispered, "He's gone." Gone? I couldn't believe it. This was a man handcuffed, locked behind iron bars. How could he just disappear in the middle of a fire? Some said he was smuggled out by powerful men in Abuja. Others swore he saw him walking out of the flames, untouched, like a ghost. Nobody could say for sure. By evening, fear had spread across town. People locked their doors early. Whispers filled beer parlors and bus stops. Mothers warned their children not to attend night vigils, and men avoided talking too loud in public. It was as if everyone believed Pastor Ezekiel still had power over the land. I remember one old man at the junction shaking his head saying, "If ritual pastors they walk free like this, then God help us oh." As for Chief Okafor, he vanished too. His mansion in GRA was locked up, guards dismissed, cars gone. People said he had fled to Ghana, but others believed he was in hiding, waiting for things to cool down. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ezekiel's face in the fire, smiling. And I knew somehow that this story wasn't over. Something darker was still coming. 2 weeks after the fire, life in Benin tried to return to normal, but everybody knew things had changed. Churches that used to be packed were suddenly half empty. People no longer trusted pastors the way they used to. Anytime a preacher shouted too much about miracles or power, people whispered, "Hope he no be like that Ezekiel oh." The fear was everywhere. But for me, the story refused to rest. I kept asking questions. I spoke to a junior officer who was at the station the night of the fire. At first, he didn't want to talk, but after some bottles of beer, his mouth loosened. He swore that before the fire started, Pastor Ezekiel was singing inside his cell. Not ordinary songs, strange chants in a language the officer didn't understand. He said the whole building suddenly grew hot, and before they knew it, flames erupted from nowhere. By the time they broke into the cell, the pastor was gone. The officer leaned close to me and whispered, "Oh boy, forget wetin dem dey talk o. That man no be ordinary human being. He get power wey pass police work." His words sent a cold shiver down my spine. Around that same time, reports began to surface in Benin of mysterious deaths. A trader in New Benin Market slumped and died after shouting that she saw a pastor walking past her stall, even though nobody else saw him. A bus driver along Rim Road screamed that a man in white entered his bus without opening the door. By the next morning, the driver was found lifeless behind the steering wheel. People linked all this to Ezekiel, saying his spirit was roaming, demanding the completion of the sacrifice. It was then I realized what he meant at the checkpoint when he said, "The altar has already started." He wasn't joking, and I feared we hadn't even seen the worst yet. The fear in Benin soon spread beyond the city. Newspapers carried the story with bold headlines: "Occult pastor on the loose," and "Human sacrifice scandal rocks Edo State." Even Lagos stations picked it up, and before long, people everywhere were talking about it. Some called it fake news, others said it was just politics, but those of us who had seen things with our own eyes knew it was real. One night, as I sat in my uncle's beer parlor at Ugbo, a group of men were arguing. One of them, a bus driver, swore that Pastor Ezekiel had been spotted at Ore, walking barefoot at midnight, still wearing that same white suit. Another man said he heard the pastor was hiding in Abuja, being protected by some top politicians who needed his powers. The argument went back and forth until one elderly man who had been silent finally spoke. He said, "Make una no deceive una self. This matter no be about man wey run, na spiritual thing. If you like, chase am reach heaven, you no go catch am. Na altar dey control everything." Those words hit me hard, because deep down, I was beginning to feel the same way. Ezekiel was no longer just a man who killed for sacrifice. He had become a symbol of how rotten and dangerous things in our society had grown. Days later, another shocking event happened. A video went viral online. It showed a night vigil somewhere in Warri. In the middle of the worship, the pastor leading the program suddenly collapsed. As people rushed to help him, someone in the crowd screamed, "Look, it's him!" And there, at the back of the crowd, a man in white stood watching before disappearing into thin air. When I saw that video, my hand trembled. I remembered Ezekiel's voice at the checkpoint, calm and chilling, saying, "This thing has only started." And now I knew he was right.
By the time we entered the second month after the fire, nobody slept well in Benin again. Fear had become part of our daily life. Parents stopped their children from going to night vigils. Bus drivers refused to carry late-night passengers. And even policemen walked in groups after dark. It felt like we were all waiting for something terrible to happen. And deep down, we knew Pastor Ezekiel was behind it. One evening, as I was coming back from Ring Road, I saw a strange gathering near an uncompleted building. People were whispering, pointing fingers. When I asked what was happening, a young boy told me they found strange symbols drawn on the wall with red paint, and in the middle of the room, there was a burnt Bible and a small coffin. Someone had scrawled the words, "The altar must be fed," on the floor. My heart nearly left my chest. It was the same phrase Pastor Ezekiel had shouted at the station before the fire. That same week, we heard that Chief Okafor's body was found inside a shallow grave near the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. His hands were tied, his tongue missing, his eyes wide open as if he died in terrible fear. Rumors said he had been betrayed by the same people he once worked with. Some say he tried to escape his covenant and the spirits dragged him back. Whatever the case, his death only confirmed that something bigger was controlling everything. The scariest part for me came on a Sunday. I went to a small church near Uzelu to pray,
thinking I would find peace. But during worship, the pastor suddenly dropped the mic and began shouting, "He is here! He is here!" Before we could understand, the lights went off, and the whole church shook as if an earthquake had hit. In the chaos, I swear I saw a man in white standing at the entrance, watching us. By the time light returned, he was gone. That was when I accepted the bitter truth. Pastor Ezekiel was not hiding. He was everywhere. The city was drowning in fear, and the government could no longer pretend. A task force was set up involving police, soldiers, even DSS officers. Their mission was simple: track down Pastor Ezekiel, dead or alive. But in Nigeria, when politicians say mission, what they often mean is cover up. I didn't trust them one bit. I later confirmed my suspicion. A friend of mine who worked as a clerk in government house whispered to me that Ezekiel's name had been mentioned in meetings with top men. He told me some politicians had actually begged that the case should die quietly because exposing the full truth would shake the entire country. When I asked him what he meant, he just said, "My brother, the people we dey vote for and the pastors we dey kneel down for, they drink from the same pot." That statement alone nearly gave me fever.